Well, it's a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Very welcome. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no worries. How's your day going so far? It's still quite early, obviously, but yeah, how's it going?
It's being surrounded by building works.
Oh, the joy. Oh, yes.
Mm. Yeah, so apologies if there's a bit of noise in the background, but shouldn't be too bad.
We make do, such as life. It is what it is. But
Mm.
importantly, it's been just a little over a month since the release of There Will Be No Peace in My Valley. Early days, obviously, but just enough time to start to gauge what the reaction's been like. So overall, when you look at the comments and the reviews, combining everything, how satisfied are you with the response?
Very satisfied. Obviously, with a debut band, you really have no gauge for how things are going to go. Um, I think also some of the label response we got when we were talking to people was a bit like we don't know how to position this, sell this, whatever they look for. It's something that combines a couple of bits of metal that I love, but doesn't really sit in one camp or the other. And I think people were genuinely scratching their heads a little bit to see where that went. And I think I wouldn't say it knocked my confidence about it, but it made me a little hesitant as to think about how this is going to be received. Is anybody going to get this? Are they going to enjoy what I see as traditional heavy metal crossed with the extreme metal that I love? But as soon as it came out, it's just been really positive. We've had great reviews. You get the odd bewildering one, but like the vast majority has been really positive. So I couldn't be happier, to be honest.
Bewildered or not, they're listening and talking about it, so that's good nonetheless.
Yeah, that's the one thing about Spotify I didn't really think about beforehand is it's quite you can gauge how many well you can see how many people are listening every day, every week, where in the world they're listening from as well, which has been very surprising at times and brilliant. So that's been pretty good on that front. You can really see that there's a good number of people listening every day, returning to the album, and then new listeners picking it up. So somebody's listening to it.
Fair enough. But it's easy to get like bogged down with numbers as well. You know, you have all those stats to hand. Are you able to detach yourself and distance yourself from becoming too obsessive over those specific numbers?
I could see how that would be something that a rabbit hole you could go down, but no, I've not been losing sleep about it. It's been good enough.
That's it. That's what I want to hear. Talking about though, going back to kind of like the build, and particularly, you've got this record and you want to release it. Did you then have a clear strategy for what you wanted to do, how you wanted to release this, and how you wanted to promote it?
Um, yes and no. I knew what I didn't want people to say about it. I didn't want somebody to call us a black metal band or a whatever band. We have elements of those, and I love most of those genres, dearly as well. But this is something a little bit different. I know everybody says that about their own band, but I think that's been reflected in the reviews. I mean, it is not something everybody's doing. Um, so yeah, I wanted to avoid falling into the sort of cliches of what everybody says about a new type of music in a certain genre or a niche of a genre. Um, but to be honest, like I said, this is the other lads in the band have a lot more experience than this at me. So I was just waiting to see what came really.
But were you conscious? I mean, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with not wanting to be pigeonholed and genre placed, but also like there's an inevitability about it. Everyone wants to put you in a box, even if it's just to sell you some in some way. Were you conscious of the fact that you were inevitably going to end up being put in some boxes?
Yes, because people have to make a living, and I'm a realist, and I understand that. I've worked for myself for about 3 decades now, and I know that you have to do and say things that you may not want to just to get the thing to be get out there and in front of people. And then people can make their own minds up about what it is, you know. I mean, it's this is all for the listener. Everything that we do is for the listener at the end of the day. And nobody's with them in their headphones telling them what to think about the music they're listening to.
Um, have you noticed a common theme, like from some of the listeners, from comments online, even reviews, sort of, I don't know, maybe a specific favorite track or a moment or just a terminology that everyone's kind of saying?
I think the listeners have got everything, surprisingly to me, absolutely perfect. They seem to have understood everything that I intended and was worried that people would get. There seems to be a real understanding of, oh, I love like this sort of death thrash, blackened metal with this traditional metal sensibilities. Um, that has been the greatest joy about all this to me because I was worried that maybe anybody would get it, and like literally everybody from the listener's point of view, you can read comments online or people have sent us, really brilliant messages, about how much they're enjoying the album and what they think of it. And that's been, surprising and really rewarding.
It's fantastic to hear that because, of course, some people know you are the mastermind behind this band and this record, playing all the instruments except the drums and obviously doing vocals. The former's handled by Rob Harris, the latter by Nick Walllwork. For those who don't know, how did this collaboration? How did you end up working with them both?
I knew Nick when I did some photography for Winterfylleth years ago. He turned up in the studio one day with the rest of the lads, and we all got on. And over the years, that those friendships have, I've become close with some of those guys, and hung out with them and knocked around on tour with them every now and again. And yeah, that's just a friendship that came to be over time. Nick's got a fantastic voice. Nick's an encyclopedia of metal. He is unbelievable. He has got a great voice. He's got great sensibilities. He understands metal better than anybody. So if you're looking for somebody to collaborate with, obviously it says vocals on the tin, but both of these guys bring a massive amount of talent and understanding to what they're doing. So yeah, I'm writing a lot of the majority of everything, but they if you don't allow guys like that to bring their own interpretations to the plate, then you are insane because they're gonna elevate everything around you. So yeah, I mean that was like that. And with Rob, it was a sort of similar thing. I just knew him through the metal scene in Manchester, and we'd always got on. And when it came to thinking of the people that I wanted to work with, he was top of the list because he has this incredibly, from Fetal Juice and, and Necronautical, he's got a really aggressive style. It's but he's technically, brilliant. But at the same time, something I've always appreciated in drummers, and I really love drumming. I love drummers, and it's one of the greatest things of metal. I think that aggression that comes from the drums. But he's got that sort of Bonham roll to it. It's not like a machine. He's got that swing to it, much like Dave Lombardo does, in his Slayer years or something like that. So yeah, I think it's easier when you're writing things with people in mind. Like if you're writing a script for a film, it's always easier to know when you've got the actor in mind or something like that. So it all balances like that. It's not just me.
And it provided you could then get the person. That's the thing. Like in regards to say using the actor terminology, provided you can get them, that's the thing. You envision it for someone who's unavailable.
Yeah.
But obviously that was not the case here, which is
I
fantastic.
got them very drunk on video and held them to it.
When you first envisioned this band then and what it could be, compared to what it is now with the album being out, How close are the two?
Well, right at the start, I would say it was more black metal, more traditional black metal. The black metal I tend to go for, I mean, I love everything, the original European stuff and everything, and that's a big part of my musical background. I think the stuff I go for these days tends to be black metal that's quite aggressive, has a bit of I'm gonna say it has melody, but it's almost got this muscularity to it that you might talk about more in terms of something that's edging on to death metal or more extreme metals. So I thought that would be where it would end up. Um, and then somewhere along the way, it turned quite significantly. And I realized what I wanted to hear was something that was just as melodic as it was aggressive. And I think I've worked really hard to balance those two things because it's easier said than done. Um, and then at some point, it also became, do you know what? I want to hear what my influences from when I was a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s. And that, your Iron Maidens, your Judas Priest. I want to hear what that sort of riffing how that can exist within your sort of blackened extreme metal framework. And this is where we've ended up, but there really wasn't. It took me a really, really long time. If we're going from A to B, it took me a very long time to see where B was.
How long? Are we talking years here?
Yeah, I mean, this started the writing of this album started about 5 years ago. And I've had riffs lying around for much longer than that. Although I will say that a lot of the initial ideas I'd had for years, I'd say 90% of them were changed by the time the record came out.
Oh, okay, so is that kind of just because you evolved as an artist, your
Yeah.
talents changed and improved?
I definitely, I think, let me put this, you, it became easier for me to understand what I was trying to say the more I did it. So I'd write something, it takes me a long time to write a song. It'll take months, and I tend to write something, get something down, and then I'll leave it, and I'll come back to it later with fresh eyes. So that process takes quite a while anyway.
Does that mean when it came to sort of like, using this album as the base, like the vision for this album, there wasn't one really, or at least there wasn't a clarity around it?
Well, I think it just takes a bit of bravery to go, I don't know where this is going to go, but I believe in myself enough to try and get there and fail a few times and see what happens. What I didn't want to do is go, I want this to be this subgenre, this niche, and I'm going to write to get to there. I was writing to get to wherever the hell it was going to go. And I trusted in myself enough to well, I hoped that it would get to a point where it was a great interpretation of what I wanted to hear and also all the metal that I've loved since being a kid.
What about the personal life side of things, though? Because inevitably, personal life, particularly over a longer period of time, will impact and dictate sometimes what you're doing musically, what you want the record to sound like, and so on. Did you find at any stage over the past couple of years during the writing of this album that personal life did have an impact? Or perhaps when you reflect on it now, you're able to go, okay, yeah, that period of time did affect the album.
Um, well, I work for myself, so I that helps because you've got to take jobs when they're there, but you have an amount of control over saying yes or no if there's something that you want to do. That helps a lot. And that was a decision made much earlier in life because I knew that I wanted to live like that
Yeah.
through the good and the bad and the recessions. Um, but I mean, obviously, I guess, COVID is that thing, and lockdown is that thing that really would be the biggest impact on everybody's personal lives in the last few years. And some of this album was made during that, and even the recording sessions, we at times we were right, we're allowed in now, and then we're not, and we'll
Mm.
stop and we'll come back and see when they let us back in again. So you've got that, but um, in some ways, it gave me a little bit more time to focus on the music actually over COVID. I did a load of work on the house and I wrote a lot of music, walked the dog a lot. That was about it. Yeah.
Small positives we can take from that period of time.
Mm.
And it's always worth hearing about. But at what stage, all right, so at what stage then did you start to see what would look like a full album coming together? Was there a specific point or a certain number of tracks or even a specific track that you saw and went, okay, this is now the meat of the bones?
Yeah. Well, again, I suppose there's two answers to that. I'll briefly just cover the first one, so I don't want to get in
Mm.
the weeds of it. But there was an earlier album finished, mixed, mastered, agreed to be released by a different label, and I ended up just throwing it away because it wasn't where I really wanted to. There was a big delay, COVID, and there was other things, and it gave me too much time to sit with something that maybe wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be. So binned it. Then at the same time, I wrote Scum, the first song on the album, and that came out like some sort of force of nature. It pretty much done in 2 hours, which is unheard of for me. That's not how I write. Um, and I guess I was just in this feeling and it just came out. And at that point, I was like, I know exactly where I'm going. And everything after that had not so much a framework, but it at least had a clear direction. Um, it, yeah, that was the moment when I got that song in the can. I was like, yeah, I know what this can be, and I'm gonna expand on it. I'm gonna move around it and see what works and what doesn't. But this, I can hear this real aggression, but not at the cost of having a lot of melody in there as well, and hooks and riffs and all that good stuff.
What a moment. Do you remember what that felt like? Because I'd imagine it's quite buoyant.
Yeah, it came on a pretty bad day actually. Just one of those confluences of everything going wrong at once. And it was a reaction. It was just a reaction to everything that had been a lot of things, just everything going on in the world at the time, things that were annoying me, just everything that's around you. Um, yeah, it was a pure reaction. It was as organic as it can be.
Love to hear. All right, when you reflect over the entire creative process of this album, the lengthy and long-winded creative process, what were some of your specific challenges that you faced? Things that you look back now and go, okay, that was difficult, even if it turned out okay.
Hmm. Mixing was a very difficult stage because I didn't really, I have a lot more experience with that now. I've been through two full mixes with this really, and our producer Joe Clayton at No Studios has the patience of a saint. I don't know how he put up with me, my endless tweaks and overly managing everything probably. Um, I think that's what you do first time round a bit. You're trying to find your own feet. If you've got good people around you to guide you, that's a big help. And luckily for me, I did. Um, but yeah, that was difficult because I was really, really keen to keep this. I don't like overly produced metal. I don't
Mm.
like what the modern metal sound is. I wanted to retain that older feel. It can get muddy when you've got a lot of fast work and you've got a lot going on. The real challenge is balancing, letting those bits shine out in the mix, but keeping it coherent. That's a very, very fine balance, and I'm sure it'll be a fine balance next time as well. It's not an easy thing. That was a real challenge. Yeah.
He's Stan, and of course the record is that now. So you got through it, you survived it, and you learned so much from it.
I'm not. Hopefully, I've not made it sound that bad.
Similar question, but on the more positive side of things. So again, the entire creative process, when you reflect on it, what are some of your favorite moments?
Well, I mean, if you're writing, especially a lot on your own, you've heard these things a million times, and it. So you can then be sometimes only left with the surprises what other people that were with you bring to it.
Hmm.
So when we're recording in the studio and Nick and Rob are doing their things, I mean that's fascinating and wonderful, and they'll bring things that you just hadn't thought of, and it's there's times where felt like standing up and clapping in the control booth. It's you wouldn't think of it, even mistakes. You're like, whoa, whoa, wait on, let's just do that again because that was better than I thought of, and so that's fantastic. And then I think listening to the record, um, again, it's a lot of what those guys have brought to it, and I hadn't thought of in the first place. And then sometimes you just sit down if you can get that distance and sit back and listen to it as somebody new to the album would. That perspective can be difficult to find, but sometimes you just sit back and I'll listen to some of the riffs and the way it's all gone together, and it just puts a big smile on my face. It's great.
It is incredible that you can still find that because at this stage, it's fair to say you should have a level of detachment.
Yeah, but I've found actually once I was kind of had enough of it like before it was released. I'd lived with it for a while. We all had.
Mm.
But actually, I've found once it was being reviewed through people like you who actually take the time to sit down and listen and really have a great insight to it. And then from what listeners, like fans have been saying about the album, it it shifted my perspective and I was able to see it through people, in a different way through people's eyes. And I've actually really come to enjoy it in a completely different way now. It's sort of renewed that enthusiasm for it quite a bit. I've enjoyed that.
Oh, that's fabulous. I love that as well because I particularly love reading reviews and hearing comments when people talk about feelings in particular because you can sit there and you can analyze and you can describe the makeup and how a song's structure is and so on, but your feelings on it and how it makes you feel is a totally different thing. With that
Mm.
in mind, then, what do you have any particular hopes, if that's the right word, or desires what you would like listeners to feel when they hear this album?
Um, I would, well, beyond what we've already talked about, in that I'm really enjoying that they're hearing these different influences being put together. Um, I've always been of a mind. I read a quote by David Hockney, the artist, recently, where he said that art is a constantly evolving conversation between the artist and the viewer in his realm. And that struck a chord because, way way down the line after I'm gone, people will still be listening. Well, maybe they won't, but people could still be listening to this and talking about it and having a conversation with me as an artist as well, just by their interpretation of listening to it. So if we talk about things like lyrics and my interpretations of songs, I almost don't want to lean into that too heavily because I really want people to feel what they're going to feel about it. Um, yeah, yeah,
So
definitely that.
you're quite happy to leave your music, your songs, your lyrics open to interpretation for people to take whatever they want from it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't want. I think it would have spoiled it. Obviously, when I was a kid, you just read into the, interviews with these guys in like three magazines, and that was it. And
Yeah.
now you can read stuff everywhere, and everything's open to interpretation and dissected on and on. I think that takes a little bit of the magic out of it, and because I don't write specifically, if we talk about lyrics, for instance, I'm not writing specifically about this one thing this day. I tend to try and coalesce a feeling inside me and then get it out. Now, if I start telling everybody what that is, can somebody then enjoy that that moment, that reaction to the music, that companionship? If I'm describing exactly what it is, I don't really want to do that. Of course, people want to know, that's
Mm.
understandable. But I think, and if anybody wants to talk to me about it at a gig or in private about it, I'll certainly explain what I was thinking with some parts of the album musically and lyrically. But I I do like, for me, metal has always been a part of my life, and it's been a great companion. And I like to interpret things my own way, and I hope other people get that from it as well.
I agree. Feel what you want to feel and hopefully take what you can from the music. Just listen to it
Mm.
basically and try and make this album as successful as possible. Which, speaking of, then, for you personally, what would success for this record look like?
Hard to gauge these days, isn't it? Um,
Hmm.
let's say 20 years ago, you knew what your record sales were, and that would be a great indication of where everything is. Um, like I say, it seems to be continuing to be listened to, all the time. So online, which is a great thing. We've certainly sold some records. The record label has said that they're restocking in shops, which is a great sign as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's very hard to quantify that. Nobody goes into extreme metal to make their millions. It's a labor of love, of course. But for me, if somebody, it might sound trite, but if somebody leans on this record one day to make themselves feel better or whatever it is, then that's fantastic. I'd be happy with that. Yeah.
You've got to take any measure of success these days. You're absolutely right. How it is measured, and certainly when it comes to sales, it seems a pointless conversation. You start talking about likes and follows and numbers and line and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and it gets into messy territory. Actually, speaking of which, that side of things, the unfortunate side of making music these days, involving social media presence and having to push yourself and the band and the music out there. How comfortable are you with that side of things? And importantly, are you able to enjoy that?
I've really enjoyed the element of it that
Mm.
is conversing directly with fans, direct messages I've had from the southern tip of Chile and all sorts of places. I mean, that is such a good feeling when you're talking to somebody and you've got this common enjoyment of something, and they literally could not be further away, geographically from you. So that kind of the communication I've found I really love. I am too old to really understand social media. I've never been on Facebook until the band page got started. Um, some of the other guys have a bit more announce about it than me, and they're okay. Um, I tend to do the Instagram side of it because I know it a little bit, but I'm not mad on social media. You know, it's certainly, you need it to get your name out there at the moment. However, um, I think that's balanced out by there's just so much music coming out that who how can anybody discern what they think is worth their time or not? There's so much. So yeah, I think like most things, it's a good and bad thing. I'm not a big
Mm.
social media fan. I don't really get it, but yeah, it's a necessary evil if you look at it like that. But like
Yes.
I said, communicating with people has been a really enjoyable thing for me. I've enjoyed that.
It is fantastic that you've had that experience because the experience can be so draining, can be so poor and exhausting. It's fantastic that you've managed to get any positives out of it.
Yeah, you've got to keep on
Okay.
top of it. I think that's definitely so it does feel like a bit of a job.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's fair to say confidently we're not gonna see you any time on TikTok doing any trend dances or anything like that.
Oh, not with my back.
All right, looking a bit forward then and into 2025, specifically goals, realistic goals that perhaps you'd like to achieve over the next 12 months. Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on with writing the next album for a bit now. I'm really enjoying seeing where that's going. Again, I'm stepping out of the way and letting it find its own place. It's going in some slightly different avenues. You know, I think there's probably more classic heavy metal in there, I would say, for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's the most enjoyable thing for me. I love the writing of the music and you know the recording of it.
Yeah.
That's the most satisfying thing. So I love seeing songs come together. And you can, you know, I can lock myself away for 9, 10 hours and come out a bit frazzled. And then the day after, like, whoa, where did that come from? You know, it's this wonderful surprise when you come back to it. You know, that's my favorite thing, really, about the whole process. As far as externally, you know, we'll talk about maybe playing a few shows. I don't think we're going to be some big touring band. I think I've said it before. Everybody is not a spring chicken, and everybody's got families, jobs. It's you know, and getting to other countries now is a serious expense.
Mhm.
Seriously, I mean, the US is just prohibitive now because of the prices they put up for touring bands recently. Brexit didn't make it any easier, of course. Um, so I'd like to say we'll do something, you know, be it maybe um, a short tour on our own, maybe a festival or something like that. You know, there are hurdles to that. We need uh, at least one more member to do it, which we've had in the past, but you know, that would need to be
Mm.
sorted as well. But yeah, yeah, something like that going forward would be great next year.
Never say never, I guess you're saying in that point. See what happens there. But new music
Hmm.
is inevitable. Whatever that might sound like, it'll be fascinating nonetheless. But we are still well within the period where There Will Be No Peace in My Valley needs all the attention. It's only been out for a little over a month and it deserves all the attention because it is a fabulous release. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carl. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.